Hey, good evening. Thanks a lot for the introduction, and thanks for previous presentations, and thanks for staying. All right. Yeah. My name is Fabian. I'm one half of the starting part of Dynamo. Johannes couldn't be with us here tonight, but it's very important to say that it's not just me. Dynamo started maybe somewhere in 2013. We don't really know yet, so we don't really know anymore. So we just like staged this kind of founding picture at some point. And it's by now a team that is really like spread out. Some people we have really close to us and we can demand a lot from, and then others are a bit more remote. Yeah, but they're all like very important part of what we do, and without them, a lot of things, all of the things would never have happened in the way they did. And also, I think I would never stand here. This is the garden of Gustavo, a Brazilian type engineer who is insanely talented, that we had the pleasure to meet while we all lived in Amsterdam, sometime in maybe 2013, 14, something like this, who moved back to Brazil and is living really like halfway between Sao Paulo and Rio. Then this is Erkin, who is in this picture kerning a typeface with the Xbox controller. He was the first one to really like trust us when we didn't really have a studio yet, but he came to intern with us and basically stayed connected with us and was really part of every official release that Johannes and I put out so far. Then this is Jakub, a graphic designer and a programmer that is really talented, that is now art director of the Czech Vogue and kind of like slowly abandoning us, so we're like doing next steps online. This is Imo, one of our most hardworking and best relaxing interns. This is Selina, who worked with us on one of our very first corporate custom typefaces. Then here, this is Andre, who is currently working with us on 2 projects in Berlin. Rob in the back, who is our first and only employee that we have. Then Chilong, who is taking care of a lot of the mastering, and Sophie, who is morally supporting him. Then Felix, who released the typeface with us. Gillian, who is going to release a typeface with us and worked with us on the specimen that we designed as well, that we put out as well. Elias, who is also more or less constant part of Dinamo, helping with several projects. Tina, who interned when I moved back to Switzerland from Berlin a couple of years back. Then Seb, who I'm having the pleasure to have here tonight, an extremely talented graphic designer and typeface designer here based in London, who published a typeface with us and is going to publish a couple more here on the day of his wedding with Johannes. It's going to take a while, but it's really important. Like, we have a lot of people that really make Dynamo what it is. Rob, we already had before walking. He's also the developer of our darkroom that I'm going to talk a little bit about later on. Larissa and Rosario, some of our oldest shared friends of Johannes and I, that also published a typeface with us. Then here, Maria, that we met the first time in real life just a couple of weeks back in San Francisco, who helped us, or we had the privilege to work with, on a Cyrillic version of Favorit. Then Dan, who's working with Johannes in Berlin on a lot of the technical documentation of typefaces, next to 2 projects that are going to come later this year as well. Risto, who was with me one summer in Berlin. Then Vanessa, who is the head of accountants and really making sure that we don't only work, but also the studio makes sense. Louis, my current intern in Basel. Then Vladimir, who's taking care of the servers. Celine, who was also working with me in Basel on a project that in the end didn't happen, but turned out really nicely, so we're going to see what is happening to that. Daniel, I think this is even a video. It does work. Well, yeah, there's a couple of more with projects that are going to come, but I didn't want to stretch it much longer. This is the studio that we have in Basel at the moment. We're just about to move to a new location, but it's basically like us here, a little bit more here on the side. Right now there's like 2 assistants, so we also occupy a little bit of this space over here sometimes. And there's an architecture studio and another studio that is more like in design research and in curation, active in Basel. And then we have a space that we share together with the graphic design studio Node in Berlin, where we occupy more or less this half and they the other. Johannes and I, we met in, I also don't remember, maybe like 2010 or something like that, because he studied in Zurich, and I'm a bit jealous of these pictures. That was like his class, his type design class in Zurich. Then he worked with Norm, with his graphic design studio in Zurich for a little bit, and then he changed to the Rietveld. I myself, I just studied in Basel, in this very building, and I had to break free from a lot of like very straight lines, so on later on. And the reason why we met each other, Johannes and I, was basically Larissa, who funnily now also designed and released a typeface with us. She was in the same class as Johannes, and she somehow like said, I know her because she comes from St. Gallen, from the same place as I come from, and she said, yeah, maybe you guys should meet. And then a couple of years later, we happened to be both in Amsterdam at the same time, Johannes and I, and somehow like just like spent a lot of time together. Went to the library, looked at old specimen catalogs and so on, and we found this source from a letter set that we somehow like very like funkily and naively just like cut out of paper and started to mess with. And then somehow like over the time we realized, oh wow, there's like such a big system to it, and brought it further. And then actually Gustavo came in, because my partner is Brazilian, and she knew Gustavo from Brazil. She somehow like said, yeah, maybe you should talk to him. He just graduated from the school in The Hague. And he somehow like opened this huge area of type design that if you just use glyphs or back then maybe Font Lab, you wouldn't really see that you can actually also include code to a type project. And he saw the project that we were working on that is called Grow, which is a display typeface that is based on like 6 outlines that somehow like can add up to this spatial feeling. And we were just at first thinking, we're really smart, and you can actually also like combine them in other ways. So maybe only the first and the third layer is visible, or the second and the third, or something like this, and you can make different combinations from basically one and the same drawing. And he came in and said, hey, you can actually even like use all of the outlines individually, and you have like 63 different possibilities to combine them. So what you see here a little bit is just like ticking off the individual outlines and creating all of the combinations possible. And that was a bit of a turning point in the history of Dynamo, that we really not only knew Gustavo is helping us with all of the production, and the typeface is really bulletproof, so we can like give them to our friends or also like sell it to other people because we know that it's gonna perform. But it was also very nice to see that actually like things have a price. Gustavo was like very, very nice to us, and we definitely didn't pay him what he would have deserved, but it also costed something. So actually out of the sudden also was fair to say, hey, these typefaces have a price, and I think that is really important to learn as well. So out of the sudden, Dynamo became a little bit like something, like a company maybe. Then a bit further down the road, we somehow like started to also like reflect a bit more, what is Dynamo? And we decided that we have these kind of like 4 areas. Dynamo projects, that's where we work for on client-based projects. So that can be commissions. In the beginning, it was a lot for like people that we know that somehow like got into maybe like cultural institutions or maybe like art spaces, stuff like that. Could design a typeface for the Kunsthalle in Zurich, one of the nicest art institutions in Switzerland. But then also more commercial stuff, like maybe a job for Nike or for, like really established brands. Then the Dynamo standards, which is a bit like our research field that we at the moment somehow like reflect a little bit if it should be called differently. That is more when we somehow like find nice things out there that other people did at some point, like types from old books or something, a lettering on a facade or stuff like that. That somehow like just inspires us, and that we maybe digitize because we want to understand it better, or maybe back when we did more graphic design projects ourselves, also use it for a website or booklet or something like that. Yeah, but we somehow we feel there's also a lot in that could somehow be more activated into the now again, and we somehow currently think about ideas how could actually this huge archive, these huge drawers of ideas and tests and references somehow also function as something that is somehow more coming into the now again. Then Dinamo hardware, that's a section where we do everything that is somehow also interesting, but not specifically typefaces. So sometimes we make a T-shirt. When we somehow started to get invited for lectures, and then I think for the first one, we somehow we went to Scandinavia, and then we thought, we make this kind of goth tour pullover, and we put all of the places on the back that we've ever visited, type related. That somehow became something that really now we have a little bit of a T-shirt line that also a lot of people that not necessarily are graphic designers anymore all of a sudden start to wear, which is really, really nice. A bit funny as well. And then, of course, we do typeface, so we almost forgot that. Well, now I have to really race. Yeah, but we also then we started to do more serious typefaces. This is a project that we did for the Biennale in Brno. Then another project that is a bit more leading into what I actually wanted to talk about, which is called Barretto, which is a kind of cowboy-style typeface that has Bauhaus serifs, so a triangular one, a circular one, and a square one. And you can either use them separately or you can combine them. If the video is playing, yeah. There's also a lot of open type stuff that is nice to just test out and include for specific versions, for specific projects. Another project we did together with Felix, with a friend of us from Amsterdam, where he made a movie project.
I'm not sure what I'm looking at.
Where two characters are playing a game and somehow start to visualize language. And he came to us in the beginning saying, hey, I realized you can really make proper letters from it. Can we make a typeface that somehow is a bit like Tetris, and you can just flip through it and compose the letters yourself? And we did that in the beginning, but then he also realized it's so hard to use it that we made a proper typeface out of it, consisting of 7 different versions, a round one, square one, skew one, blah, blah, blah. There's also a lot of technology in the back again that you can create all of them in different weights and with and without the grid and so on. So over time, we realized that really somehow exploring technology, trying to understand new technology also is a part of our interest that we want to have in our project. And that somehow also led us into exploring variable fonts at the point where it was not really completely clear where it's going to go and how do you actually export it and so on. So just maybe quickly for somebody that doesn't know what a variable font is, now conventionally a typeface is somehow saved as a static font file. So there's a light, a regular, a medium, and a bold. Maybe italics to it, and you also have to individually install them if you want to use them. Where the variable font format is basically just using exactly the same, but all in one font file. So instead of just having all of this, and then an application where you have to select a specific style, you basically have one file that contains it all, and you can also use it all. So there's no more, you can have, of course, a regular if you want, but you can also have the kind of half regular, half medium, half italic, half mono or something. So this is exactly the kind of conventional spectrum. But what we felt was really interesting is to also explore other stuff that maybe is not that obvious and not what everybody else is doing as well. And that is what has been mentioned before already, the dark room. We call that, now I have to read it from here. Or maybe you just read it yourself. A virtual space to test drive internally developed tools or plugins to help or confuse the modern type designer. So there's a lot of skeptics, of course. But basically, we published it as a kind of public tool that everybody that is interested in exploring this field can use. You can go to dynamodarkroom.com and then basically just drag and drop the font file, the variable font file that you're working in, into the browser. The browser checks out which of the axes that somehow define your movement from light to bold or from condensed to extended or whatever else you have in mind. And then you can hit the play button and you can animate it. So for example, this is one of the font projects that we developed together with Larissa and Rosario, where we just connected the regular and the mono, the proportional and the mono. So you can also have some kind of like semi-mono and semi-current style. And maybe out of the sudden, that's maybe like even something that goes back to print. Like down here, you can probably not even see my mouse the whole time, huh? Yeah, like on the bottom left, there's also like a button where if you found the perfect moment with your sliders, you can also then again like export the static font file that everybody can use just on a conventional way. But we also somehow like realizing the potential went into somehow like really experimenting like things that are not necessarily like very, very like outcome driven, but more just like searches and some like experimenting, seeing what is in the technology, learning a lot from mistakes, like this one, for example. And also just fun projects like this one, for example. Our studio mate, Sean, got his permanent residency granted in Germany. He's from Canada, so we made this for him. Still something that unfortunately is really like depending on the kind of usage, the application. So I think a lot of type designers starting to be like really enthusiastic about it are still somehow like a bit like slowed down because you also need a developer to actually implement it into some kind of a website. Or I think maybe another hint to Adobe, I think like Illustrator and Photoshop are already supporting it, but for example for all of the book designers, eDesign does not. So there's still like a lot of gap, I think, between the development and the actual application. And also us like somehow trying a lot to push it, only get like very little opportunities to actually like put it into real projects. And this one is one that actually happened here in London, I think for the last Design Biennale or whatever that was called. The Swiss Pavilion allowed us to do like a tiny lettering that would just, based on your mouse position, somehow like appear and disappear, or the position you would hold your tablet or your telephone. Okay, to stretch it even a bit more. Very briefly want to talk about a project that we actually designed really using the Dynamo darkroom, which is called White and has been released a couple of weeks back, which is a kind of proto-task that we found in an architectural paper when we lived in Amsterdam, but there was someone like talking about like the Lake of Zurich, which was kind of like a nice connection for us. And we really loved the ink traps, these kind of like sharp transitions that the letters have here that when they were printed in hot metal type with ink would somehow not fall close completely. Here you see one that is actually not really well done. And that somehow like becomes a bit anachronistic in today's world where the displays get like so sharp that you see everything. And at first we just digitized it, and a friend of ours used it for a nice publication. And we somehow like always thought, it's nice, maybe we could continue developing it, but then it also felt a bit like these ink traps are so style driven. Do we really want to put out a release that is like really focusing on that, or should we take it back? And then it's just like something completely different. That we came to the point, learning about variable font technology, saying we could actually just like offer both, and the designer itself is choosing which kind of end or which position between no ink traps and crazy ink traps he or she wants to use. So this is a very early stage. I think only going from regular to bold, and then we also we added like hairlines, and we added like a super black. It's a lot of work that also just comes with every conventional typeface design as well. You do a lot of proofing, you position all of the accents. But with this one, what is special that you really you connect everything. So every letter from, every R from like light italic has to go to bold italic or bold upright as well. And everything is somehow like constructed from exactly the same kind of information. This is actually Erkin, who worked on this project with us as the lead. And this is what we managed to pull together in the very end. So it's like two families, one being like completely clean and without the ink traps showing at all. But of course they're all in there because you also need to pull them out with the slider. Oh, this is the same graphic, but just made a bit more juicy. And here you can see it in action. And This one is very nice. I love it, how it almost like gets a bit drunk, which is maybe a kind of inspiration. Yeah, that's all. Thanks.